Weathertop was once something else. When I see a desolate, empty ruin high on a remote mountain top, I think of what it might once have stood for, might once have meant to the people who built it, and what echoes might whisper in the fallen arches and tumbled walls. Tolkien's tales of Middle-earth offer many such opportunities for both the reader and the characters to ponder questions of what might have been, what once was, and possibly what might one day come to pass. Weathertop is a scene not only of Frodo and his loyal friends' desperate encounter with the nature of evil they are dealing with and the ominous threat they face. It is also the locale in which Gandalf struggled alone against this same evil, leaving scorch marks that visually resonate and warn of some sort of serious threat for the wary and observant eyes that later encounter them. In the virtual setting offered by the Lord of the Rings game, I came twice to the top of Weathertop. Both of my recent visits to Weathertop were informed by my knowledge gleaned from both the story of The Lord of the Rings and the film based on that story. Approaching Weathertop, both Frodo and I had an assignment. While Frodo quests desperately, bearing a ring that could mean the destruction of all that is lovely about Middle-earth, my assignment was more mundane. I climbed to the top to explore the significance of narrative as it can be remediated in the virtual setting. While Frodo was gravely wounded and came so close to the point of near death that only elven medical wisdom can eventually only partially heal him, while Frodo was so wounded in fact that he was partially consumed by the same empty and pointless evil that resulted in the consumptive destruction of the 9 kings of men, who descended into the identity of the Nazgul, so wounded that he could never really return to the innocence of his former existence as a happy young hobbit of the Shire, and eventually knew he must fade and go into the West, like the elves. My incapacitation, while it was faded, gray, frustrating, and hindered my efforts to reach my goal, really meant very little. The Lord of the Rings and the novels and the movies is a setting for heroes. The difference for me climbing the game remediated Weathertop is that heroism is differently defined in a modern mundane world. And while this is true for readers of the books and watchers of the films, it is even more the case while playing a game with canned quests, non-player characters, and lots of interfaces. There is a difference between the setting of Weathertop without the intrusive aspects of the game and with them. Either way, though, the exploration of what it means to be a hero remains. That, I think, is why such tales exist, why Weathertop looms lonely in the mythic distance. It stands there as a reminder of what is important, what we too can encourage in our and others' hearts, what we can strive for. Weathertop is an indicator place. It silently encircles possibilities. It can be a place of emptiness or provide a space in which friendship and loyalty can strengthen bonds, and where risks taken for what really matters can unfold. It is a place for heroes. For me, the true hero of The Lord of the Rings is Samwise Gamgee. It was Sam who at Weathertop stood loyally by and for the ring-bearer. It was Sam who would not leave Frodo's side after his wounding, and it is Sam who, if he cannot bear the ring for his beloved Frodo, will carry him bodily up a seething volcano at the center of evil, to destroy the central tool of a corrupted Lord of Destruction. Who was I then, Lindalaer, which means lovely song, at play in a gameplay remediated echo of Middle-earth, to compare my elven self with the likes of Sam? My first game-mediated ascent of Weathertop happened when I could not travel to meet my fellowship to ascend together in a quest to retake Weathertop. I was stuck at a campground near the foot of the mountain, and the members of my fellowship and their leader were elsewhere. The leader tried to bring me to them, but something was, quote, wrong with the game, unquote, and I could not join them. Immersed in a fantasy setting that encourages magical thinking, I took it as a sign. I had been warned that I needed to be a stronger and better fighter to attempt this journey. Here's a quote from the instructions for this assignment. If you do not have a character at level 22, you will probably have to join a group to fight your way up to the top of Weathertop. You do not have to succeed in reaching the top, but you must try. Unquote. Now, being stubborn and having experienced questing as far as the Barrow Downs alone, which is pretty far for a weaponless chicken, and knowing that I must try, I tried. I attempted first to increase my level while at the same time I accepted a quest from the ranger Candace at his encampment. A series of quests, in fact, that would bring me closer to the goal. My assignment was at Root to find and kill some orcs and survive that. In the process of this, where a turn to the west would have led to further orc slaughter, I saw that a path to my east led up. What if, I wondered, and turned right? So it was that after some wrong turns, and after some amazing views of the countryside, and after a few nasty birds I needed to dispatch, I made it to the top of Weathertop. It was a glorious day, and the old ruin was quiet and empty. I had made it to the top. I had easily conquered the mountain and the assignment. I took various shots of myself as a conquering heroine. At the same time, my novel-induced prescience led me to know what probably had caused those blackened scorch marks there on the ground. This same awareness of what this place meant for Frodo made me feel sad and respectful, and I sat for a while by a pretty flower bush that, for all I knew, might have been wandered by Gandalf's or Frodo's blood. Ultimately, I was no hero. I had completed one assignment, but not the quest Candace had given me. I refreshed myself both in-world and out, and decided to try again. I returned to Candace and the quest he'd given me, and eventually it led to my opportunity to retake Weathertop as a solo attempt with Candace there for part of the journey. It was daytime and quiet when I first ascended. My second trip was darker. Literally, it was nighttime and it was raining. What I noticed in my second, more desperate and deadly attempt is that the narrative aspect of this quest in Lotro, while it may advance the story and inform the scene, is also intrusive. All of the tools of combat, survival, identity, and navigation obscure the experience of what it means to climb and retake Weathertop from the nasty Uruk-hai and wargs that have infested it. If I wanted to see the mountain and experience the story and fight, I could not shut off the visual noise of the interface. I also could not capture screenshots easily while fighting, but I tried. I can't say that this was a valiant attempt, but I did try. As a lover of all that is lovely about Middle-earth, I happily slaughter the nasty things that put themselves in my path. As an inexperienced elven hunter who was not buffed up enough to do it alone, I was incapacitated several times, but like the far more worthy and indomitable hobbits and their amazing fellowship, I persevered. I was determined to keep going. I figured I might eventually level up enough to survive it at this rate, so I kept going. My weaponry and armor began to fail. I did not want to go all the way back down to the Forsaken Inn to repair it. The interface offered a solution. Give it some points, and boom, all is well. I wondered, what does that really mean? If this was a real quest, I'd have to sit for several days sewing and rubbing oils into leather, and patching and sharpening swords to get back in fighting order. But no, I clicked a button and all was well. This bothered me, but hey, if warriors could click a button and fix the armor and get on with things, they would, and so I did. I realized that what I had killed before stayed dead when I recovered from my gray incapacity, so I whistled up my horse and rode through the scenes of former struggles until I encountered living monsters and then dismounted and had at them again. I eventually encountered Candace again, near the top. Wounded, he encouraged me to keep going, and we attempted the summit together. I did not figure out what happened to me there. I encountered a huge, nasty monster and thought, oh, I'm going to die here. But somehow I didn't. Intuitively, I know that I must have been touched by something divine. But if the window-laden interface told me, I missed it. Suddenly, I was not a level 19 fighter with less than 1,000 hit points between me and death. Suddenly, I was glowing and had 3,524 points to fight with. I slew the huge Olog Snaga and stood again on the scorched summit, lit up like a beacon of hope for Middle-earth. What now is Weathertop? One of my kindred described it as a veritable Yellowstone for Coursera students all this past weekend. I remarked, yes it was, and there were even geysers. Geysers of orc blood, I said with a satisfied and bloodthirsty grin. Weathertop is again a faint ruin above golden lands, infested still with mocking parodies of the beauty of elvish identity. As the scene of more than one adventure, both in story, in the past, and for future questers, Weathertop remains, at least in part, a moody enigma with possibilities and memories echoing from the very stones that support its toppled walls.